faster things. No, I'm no stranger to the faster things. Sunday morning, 3 a.m. I've got no place to go again. There was a time I could knock at your door. Well, I can knock, but you're not there no more. Yes, I can knock, but you're not there no more. I can't count how many lies I've told. It won't matter when I'm dead and cold. All that matters is this mad machine. And I can drive this thing like Steve McQueen. Yes, I can drive this thing like Steve McQueen. I go into the corners like I don't mind dying. Only the amateurs obey the lines. There's nothing left to do but roll the joint and push the mission to the breaking point. And push the mission to the breaking point. I feel I'm fading, there's not a whole lot left. So here's to life and its many days. There was a time I would just repent, but that was back when I was innocent. Yes, that was back when I was innocent. All the last nights and the long goodbyes, the promises that became the lies. That piece of beautiful you tried to reach, and waves crashing on a windy beach. And waves crashing on a windy beach. Oh, oh. I want so hard to tell you how I feel, deep in the miracle of cowboy need. At this time of night I drive and pray to the patron saint of the lost highway. To the patron saint of the lost highway. Thank you.
Oh, Bocephus King live in studio.
That was awesome.
It's Thursday, it's 4:20. That can only mean one thing.
The conversation starts now.
And I'm Shane Fox, and welcome to another edition of THC Live. Before we go any further, we got to thank Bocephus King in studio with us live. And you could probably notice something else. Bocephus, that was tremendous.
That was awesome. Thank
You can notice a lot of applause, a bigger crew than usual. We have a live studio audience this week.
We do. They're alive. They're really alive.
Can we get a shot of the... I don't know.
I don't know if we can
I
or
can't
not.
see
Well,
program.
we can see them, so that's all that matters. So thank you guys for all
They're
coming out
here.
and joining us as well.
They're here. Trust us. They're here. We got a jam-packed show for you once again. We'll hear more from Bocephus King coming up a little bit later. Our first guest on the
We
show.
have Jodie Emery coming. She's going to be sitting on the couch in front of all our guests here.
Yeah, live in studio. Of course, Jodie doesn't really need much of an introduction. Long-time activist, whether it comes to the Cannabis Culture magazine, the stores, Pot TV. If it has something to do with cannabis, she's been involved in it, the good and the bad. She'll join us live in studio. We're excited about that.
We have Terry Roycroft from MCRCI.
See, I can never really remember
I can remember that part.
The Medicinal Cannabis Resource Centre. They're more than consultants, I guess. It's kind of like one-stop shopping. If you're someone who's deciding, you know what, I'd like to try the medical marijuana route. I don't even know where to begin. Terry and his team kind of walk you through the process. We'll talk to Terry as well. But as always, we like to start the show off by looking back.
We do. And this week we're going to throw to some more history facts from every week's episode of Growing Pains.
I was asked by a group of children what to do if they were offered drugs. And I answered, just say no. Say yes to your life. And when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
Whatever they're selling, I don't want it.
In the early 1980s, the war on drugs is heating up. Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign is quickly followed by more concrete action. President Ronald Reagan signs an executive order waiving the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits soldiers from enforcing state laws. This allows the U.S. military to directly engage in the war on drugs, which is great if you're in the military, but kind of sucks if you're a drug kingpin.
Okay, he's on fire. He's on fire. He's on fire. He burned up. He's down.
Between 1982 and 1987, Pentagon anti-drug spending surges from $1 million to $196 million. Drug tests for government employees become mandatory. In Canada, in 1988, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney passes Section 462.2 of the Criminal Code, one of the strictest censorship laws in the world. It bans all literature and advocacy for growing or using cannabis. There is no exemption for scientific, political, or journalistic writing. That same year in the U.S., DEA law judge Francis Young declares marijuana one of the safest therapeutically active substances known to man and calls its Schedule I classification unreasonable, arbitrary, and capricious. The Bush administration sits on the report for a year before rejecting it on December 30th, 1989, a Saturday on a holiday weekend. In 1994, the Ontario Court of Justice overturns Mulroney's literature ban. The decision is not appealed to Canada's Supreme Court, so technically it only applies in Ontario. For those of you living in other provinces, sorry about that. Then, on October 30th, 1995, Prime Minister Jean Chrétien
The proof is a proof.
passes a law that would make Joe Stalin proud.
Joe Stalin.
You might want to try Joseph.
I think you'd remember that.
Oh, yes!
The Controlled Drugs and Substances Act allows police to search property without a warrant, confiscate property without a conviction, and eliminates jury trials for cannabis trafficking cases. Every scientific, medical, and legal group that testifies in Parliament says the law is the wrong thing to do. The only supporters? The only good thing about the law? It allows the first commercial cultivation of hemp since 1945. U.S. Customs is not impressed. In 1999, they seize 50 tons of Canadian hemp seed, deeming it legally marijuana.
What you talking about, Willis?
The DEA then announces that Canadian hemp foods with any THC are banned. For comparison, the legal THC limit in Canada is 10 parts per million, or 0.001%. That's 1,000th of a percent.
Is that a lot?
Canadian hemp farmers go bankrupt.
Oh my gosh. Does that suck?
Yes, it does. But what happens next will give some people reason to celebrate. That's next week on Growing Pains.
What would I do if someone offered me these drugs? I'd tell them to take a hike.
Always learn something.
Another informative
See, and I was living through the
episode.
80s and I had no idea about
Really?
the ban on literature. It seems ridiculous when you think about it in hindsight now, going, how could that possibly be? But sure
Just,
enough.
20-ish, 25 years ago, it was completely different.
Yeah. It's amazing
wow,
how
it's
things
amazing
have
where it's
changed.
going.
Before we introduce Jodie, tell folks how if they have a question for Jodie or any other guests.
So as we are always live, we have a bar down below us that you can go and you can write your live questions and we will ask them to each guest on the show. You can also find us on YouTube at thclive.tv, where we now have all past, present, not future.
You can binge watch Growing Pains.
You can binge, which I love. It's my favorite. And Lighten Up, those two are my favorite. So here in studio, we are blessed to have Jodie Emery, a huge advocate for marijuana and cannabis. It's really exciting to have you.
Hey, thank you for having me here.
Thanks for joining us. You've been involved in the fight, we'll use the term fight, a different war for drugs, I guess, in a way. You've paid all kinds of prices on a personal level, financially, socially. What makes you keep doing this as opposed to going, you know what, leave the fight to someone else, I'll just go live quietly somewhere?
Well, sometimes I do get tired and I think to myself, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. If the government wants to shut me up, just do the right thing and I'll go away. But they keep doing the wrong thing. And for me, I just get very upset every day knowing that peaceful, nonviolent people are being harmed, actually harmed by the government and the law, not for something that's just benign, but for something that actually saves lives and improves lives and can be the solution to issues like the opioid crisis and so much more. So for me, it's a human rights issue. I've always been involved from the magazine perspective. I was the editor, so we were always looking at articles about the government and the way they're treating people. And I was just shocked to see that peaceful, nonviolent people can be so brutally stigmatized, demonized, have their kids taken away, their home, their job. And it just makes me furious. I can't think of anything else in the world or anything else where a peaceful personal lifestyle choice, in Canada at least, where that sort of choice can lead to incredible punishment and suffering. So I get upset. I don't care if I can't ever smoke pot again. Right. I don't care if I can't run cannabis stores. That was never my intention. It was something we only did recently. For me, it's always been about how the government is hurting peaceful, nonviolent people for a plant that saves lives. It's cut and dried, and it makes me mad every morning.
When did you decide you wanted to become a cannabis enthusiast and an advocate and stand up for?
Well, you were probably an enthusiast first, I imagine.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I was an anti-marijuana, anti-drug, teacher's pet authoritarian who loved a man in uniform.
Okay, do we have a breaking news logo? Because that would be good right now.
The honest truth is,
really?
I love police. I loved authority. I was a teacher's pet, a leadership student, and I gave my sister and all my friends such a hard time for being teenagers, basically. If they drank or did cannabis or anything else, I'd call them stupid. I was always really bad, actually. I was kind of probably a jerk, a little bossy brat. But my best friend started smoking pot and reading Cannabis Culture magazine and watching Pot TV and talking about this marijuana seed man named Marc Emery, who was running for office that year in BC. It was the BC election campaign in 2001. And that same year, 9/11 happened. And it seems unrelated, but for me, as a student, watching as we were being taught about what was going on, I was stunned to realize that my stoner friends knew all about where Afghanistan was, first of all. They knew all about the military-industrial complex. They knew politics. They knew world events. They were smart, basically. And I thought, how can these stoners be so well-informed about the world and history and all this? I just didn't understand, but it was because they were watching Pot TV and reading Cannabis Culture. And so I started opening my mind. And then I tried beer one night, Pilsner, took shot glasses because it was so terrible. But I also tried cannabis by using a gravity bong in a hot box bathroom. So, teenagers,
we're going retro,
teenagers.
retro tonight. Yeah.
But it really changed my perspective, and it started making me question everything, which is really, I think, why governments and authority figures are so concerned, because after that point, I didn't believe any of the drug education, so I did dabble in other drugs, which wasn't wise, but I'd been lied to. And that's why the government's continued misinformation campaign is so dangerous, because when they keep lying, people are going to say, well, what else are you lying about? And they might not take good advice.
At the height of the battle, See, now it seems there's light at the end of the tunnel. It might not be the light everyone wants, but at least there's progress being made. Think back to not too long ago. Did you see this day coming? Did you see this? Or was this too much going, I hope I see it in my lifetime?
Well, to be honest, I don't think it's a good idea to make plans, because suddenly the U.S. government shows up at your Canadian doorstep and tries to take your husband away for life, and you go, wow, I didn't plan for that. So you can't really plan for anything. And I figure every day that goes by that we're out and about and able to walk and breathe and just be here, I'm grateful for, because you never know what's going to happen next. And so years ago, I remember, I was just asked recently actually by the Financial Post about how is the industry different now. You've got all the suits and the business side getting into it, then you've got the grassroots community. How has it changed? And I said, you know, back when I first showed up in Vancouver in 2004, just getting marijuana mentioned in the news was something we worked so hard for, and typically it was a bad story about dangerous grow-ops and gangsters and this and that. So just getting the truth about cannabis out there was such an uphill struggle, but it meant a lot to see the Liberal Party embrace legalization. But I have to remind people, Trudeau was opposed to it, even though the party membership voted for it. And he did support decrim before and doesn't now. So even though I'm excited to see the changes, I can't help but I'm frustrated, because I feel like we're going backwards in a big way. And 2 years ago, I said I didn't have a job as an activist anymore. There was no more reefer madness. There was no more lies. Everybody knew it was going to be legal. The Liberals were coming in. It was great. And then they put a narc in charge of legalization, Fox in charge of the hen house. And this Bill Blair, police chief of Toronto, he's not in favor of cannabis. They want to restrict and limit it. And we know the police, as good as they are, and I have police in my family, they're enforcing a law that's harming people. And so when they put a cop in charge of legalization, you can kind of tell where it's going to go. So I am nervous about the future, to be honest.
Well, and let's talk, every province is going to be different, it seems. Kind of like the liquor laws are different in every province within a certain kind of framework. So Ontario, we've heard they're talking about the Liquor Control Board, they're running things. I can't imagine you think that. No one really thinks that's a good idea.
Right. No,
except probably the Liquor Control Board and the government.
Of course, the government. And in fact, there's an interesting story. So I was arrested in March, and I have personal charges, and I was hoping to maybe go to the Supreme Court of Canada and strike down prohibition and all that. I can't afford it, and quite frankly, we have a new law coming into effect. But I will be in the Supreme Court of Canada this December to defend the entire cannabis industry based on what you just mentioned about alcohol and borders and provincial governments and how they regulate. So right now, the cannabis industry is being really shrunk down into these sections of provincial governments where they get to control the distribution, but that is actually unconstitutional. So there's a gentleman who got busted taking beer over the border between Quebec and New Brunswick, and he's in the Supreme Court of Canada arguing that the government has no right to block the trade of goods in Canada, and in fact, that's what our Constitution says. So we applied to intervene as Cannabis Culture, representing a bunch of dispensaries who came on board, and also everyone else, the licensed producers, everyone, saying that we also are going to be impacted by these unconstitutional monopolies, so we want to say, and they accepted us, so we get to go and argue on behalf of the entire cannabis industry.
So then the country is your market, it becomes.
Exactly. BC Bud should be available to our Eastern Province fellow citizens. I mean, we should be able to trade this product all across this country. So we're battling the government on that angle, and many other angles, of course, too.
I have a question about your dispensary. So you guys, you own a whole bunch of dispensaries, and recently...
Actually, we never really did. So that's what we did last year, in early 2016. There was a lot of talk about how the licensed producers wanted to shut down dispensaries, and how dispensaries were just pretending to be medical to get around the law. But they could all be shut down anyway, and they were in a massive sweep in May called Project Claudia. So we decided that we wanted to enter into the dispensary market, first of all, because cannabis culture had struggled through my husband's imprisonment, and it had been very difficult. And we thought, we need to survive as activists, so we need money. That's the lifeblood of any charity or movement. They need money to make a difference. So we needed to go into something that wasn't going to see us disappear. But we also wanted to do it in a bold way and say, medical marijuana is essential. It's saving lives, and there are a lot of experts out there selling it and providing it to patients. We're not those people, because we haven't been on the medical forefront. different. We're talking about all Canadians having the right to access cannabis. So we decided to go with a recreational model. And we announced that. It was pre-planned for the 27th of May, and I guess the day before Toronto Police cracked down.
Yeah.
And so it turned into a big scene. But we had this franchise model, and that's what that was based on. I wanted the idea of all the BC cannabis growers, or all the Canadian cannabis growers, to be able to have a way to serve the market, to get their product to market. And what better way than having entrepreneurs and innovators open up their own businesses, buy into a franchise that's recognized for fighting for legalization, and knowing that when you spend money at that Cannabis Culture store, just like with Marc Emery Seeds all those years through the magazine, you know that money's going back to activism. So it was an enormously successful initiative, and we had hundreds of people wanting to open up shops, and we were going to be quite something, but the police had other plans.
As you said, you can't make plans. You said you can't make plans.
And you can't embarrass the Toronto Police Chief at a massive press conference either. Even if you're speaking the truth, there will be repercussions.
Okay, I got to go back to something, because you said your friend starts smoking pot, you're watching pot TV, there's the Marc Emery guy with seeds. You've alluded to your husband, Marc Emery. How do you go from, hey, you should watch this pot TV, look at this Marc Emery guy, to being Mrs. Marc Emery?
Wow, that's a funny story. So with the election happening that year, it was the first time I could actually go out and protest and go to a pot rally. And it wasn't actually Mark who showed up in town, it was Brian Taylor with the Nixon's old bus, actually. It was the BC Marijuana Party bus with the President Nixon's old bus. It is ironic, it was fun. But I went there, and then I joined up at the Cannabis Culture forums. And this is online before social media, there were forums. So Marc Emery and Dana Larson and David Mamalevine, Chris Bennett, Michelle Rainey, and so many other high-profile advocates were engaging with people online there. So I joined up and started getting educated. Because again, I had been lied to, and suddenly I was like, what's the truth out there? And the internet was there to serve that curiosity. So I engaged with people that way and decided I need to move to Vancouver. I was born and raised in Kamloops, BC. So, you got to go to the big city eventually, right? So I moved down here and started working at a restaurant, but also went to Cannabis Culture headquarters, or the BC Marijuana Party headquarters at the time, and volunteering at rallies, and I'd write letters to the newspaper. And then in 2005, so about a year after I was here, I was kind of criticizing the magazine, saying, oh, this could be better, and maybe you should do this. And Marc fired the entire staff and said, you're the assistant editor now with me, so let's go do it.
Wow.
Like, oh my gosh, amazing. Be careful what you when you think you know what you're talking about. But I took over with the magazine with him, and we made it a beautiful publication for years. And he did get arrested later that year. And we got married in 2006 and just got through all that prison and all of the ordeal, which seems like a hazy memory now when I think about it. But at the time, I think it was pretty awful.
I would think so. I remember seeing you on the news, throughout the whole ordeal, and it was hard to imagine that we were sending, Canada was sending someone to another country to serve time.
And a lot of people forget this too. I mean, and history goes on. I know. I don't want to be like the old granny activist. You kids, you don't know how good you got it. Because when I look at you,
you can smoke a joint anywhere,
right? So I don't want to be that person, because I also have to remember when I look at all these newcomers and even law enforcement and government officials, and they're ignorant about cannabis. I can't blame them. I was ignorant too. And when I first came to Vancouver, I was all legalize pot, but throw the druggies in jail for cocaine and everything else, because I was pro-cannabis, but I didn't understand the concept of prohibition as a policy being a failure. And then when I made that leap, it became more of an argument that was more acceptable to the public. You could have law enforcement and politicians and doctors saying, yeah, we should legalize cannabis by ending prohibition. I'm not in favor of it because I love pot. I'm in favor of protecting people from the harm of decriminalization. So that argument was much more effective, but it seems to have been lost. We're seeing a massive crackdown in criminalization continue.
I believe we have a live question here.
Again, studio audience today.
It's cool
First time
having.
ever on THC
I don't have to
Live.
read the 4-page questions now.
Hi. Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. My question to you is, from one cannabis advocate to another, moving forward with all these stiff penalties, if you could say anything to your fans and to people who look up to you, and maybe some people in our community as words of inspiration to keep going, what would you say and why?
Well, I'd say if you know that you're doing this for the right reasons, like a lot of people do, they'll continue no matter what. And I see that courage in a lot of parents and mothers who are finding cannabis oil works for their kids. And they know that there's a stigma and there's punishment and even risk of having their kids taken away, but they do it because it means that much to them. And quite honestly, I ask myself, like, how much am I willing to risk too? I get scared some days, and I worry that, you know, they could come anytime and hurt us and arrest us and strip us naked against our will in cages underground with guns at their hips. That's what police do to people when they get arrested. So I get very discouraged and scared, but my inspiration comes from people who I know are depending on us, and they're the bedridden people who are sick, who send notes on Instagram or Facebook, and the people who walk into the dispensaries and say, "You're saving my life," because they know that it's true. Nobody lies about someone saving their life, and meanwhile, anyone who's an activist or advocate, like I'm sure you know, it saves lives. And so that's the courage to keep going, and it's tough. I can't fault people if they get nervous and close their store or step back for a bit, because you have to sometimes self-preserve in order to survive and keep fighting. And so if, you know, some people are going to have to take the bullets on the front lines so other people can make progress afterwards. But anyone who can take action in any way is valuable. Even just speaking to your doctor about medical marijuana is helping spread that education. And you know, at least we can go to bed at night knowing we're doing the right thing. We've never hurt anyone. We're being hurt by the government. And even if that means we suffer for it, I can go to bed at night. I don't know how they do.
Sleep peaceful. We have another question.
Hi, Jodie. I have great admiration for you putting yourself out there and you become a target. Can you talk a little bit about your arrest? Because I'm still confused about how they can do that legally and what are the charges and
So when we decided to do the Cannabis Culture franchise, my company had people who wanted to own stores just pay a 7%, we were working on 7% franchise fee to have our name and to have us come speak if they got arrested. And so we started building that out.
That's a weird model, by the way.
It is, yeah.
We'll be there when you get arrested. Should you get arrested, we'll show up and talk to the
We'll show up and defend you, yeah.
Right, that's an interesting business model. Yeah.
Because we had to make sure people knew that it was a risk and that
we were also backing them too.
You need to know what you're getting into.
Be there.
Yeah.
And so when we started doing that, quite honestly, our company never bought any stores. They were all owned by others. I didn't own any stores. It was all the company that managed the franchise fees. But because we were associated with it, we were able to be indicted on conspiracy. Conspiracy is a law where if three people discuss say the three of us said, let's break the law together, and we all agree and we pass a joint. That was a conspiracy, and it's also technically organized crime once three people or more are together. So that's why the police, when they arrested us, they called us organized crime, because there are three of us, and we weren't foolish and disorganized. I guess we were quite organized. But the arrest was quite shocking. I mean, I have to admit, I didn't see it coming. I was doing an interview just like this, actually, on Zoomer TV, and I went and saw a brand new Cannabis Culture store that was opening up that day, and then I went to get my bags with Marc to go to Spanibus in Spain. Got into an Uber, which used to be illegal, and somehow they got accepted. They broke the law. Got into this Uber, went to the airport, and got out, and immediately they put us under arrest. They said, "Are you Marc Emery?" And then Marc just turned to me and they're like, "Step back, miss." So I stepped back and like, "Are you Jodie Ramsey?" That's my legal name. They handcuffed us. Marc, this is the most shocking part. Marc kept saying, "I want to call my lawyer. I want to call my lawyer." Because they're saying to us, "You have the right to call your lawyer." Yeah. Marc's like, "I want to call him right now." And they're like, "Oh, we're at the airport. It's too busy. There's nowhere to go." And he's like, "You have a cell phone. I want to call my lawyer." "Nah, we can't do it." It's because they were planning to arrest more people the next day.
And they don't want heads up.
And that night was tough, but I have to tell you, I wasn't actually ever scared at any point. I felt like, not that I knew it was coming, but I felt almost like, here we go. I can finally walk the talk I've been talking. I'm going to experience what I've been fighting against. So here, I get to finally see inside the beast. And it was terrible. And the second night was the worst, though, because they strip searched you the first day. And I was like, okay, fine, I can handle that. Take off your top. And then they put your top on, take off your bottom. And it's degrading. The more I think about it afterwards, the PTSD side of it, I'm really, really upset about that, because I was in their custody and I got refused out that day because they kept us overnight, and I went to maximum security prison where they strip you. I was like, "Oh, I'm experienced. Yeah, top first and then bottom." She's like, "All at once." No, all of it. And I thought, this is so wrong. And it just got worse and worse. I did an interview with Maclean's magazine that has some of the details, but I keep forgetting some of it, quite frankly.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And I just can't
Rehashing
stand that people suffer that. So that's why I fight, because I need to make sure that never happens to another peaceful, nonviolent person ever
Well, thank
again.
you so
thank you so much
much.
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. Oh, you're a doll, too. Thank you once again for sharing
Jodie
your
Emery,
story.
spending some time with us live on THC. Thank you so much again. Much more still to come. First, though, it's a time for a can of fact, but I find this one a little disturbing and unbelievable. Take a look.
We're confused.
I'm very confused about this. See, we live north of the 30th parallel, and there's no way we have lower THC and higher CBD than those.
I'm pretty sure BC's the BC bud, right?
Yeah, I find that, you know what, we're going to do
world.
some research on that. You know, since week one, we've been saying we need live music on the show. We need to have live music on the show.
We have
It's happening.
Bocephus King, as you saw in the intro, and now he's going to perform for you.
They say that a wink's as good as a nod. If you're so far from your God, yeah, the heaven's just as thick as the wall of the bills you carry. You do all that you please, from asphalt into the trees, but just enjoy your disease and be merry. Well, it's true what they say about death. The soul is just taking a breath, but the things that we come to expect are the source of surprises. This is the cannibal's domain, and in it you find only pain. They got Abel, they got Cain, but they're building high rises. Medicine and all the doctors' tools can't change the fact there's no cure for fools. So we draw to the mystic, life flies to the east. The travelers and tourists are not the same beast. Oh, all of the authors in all of their books, but they could never write back what the television took, and the high-speed scholars, so little to share, but it's just one more piece of a plastic nightmare. You know I've been one too, and that I cannot hide. I know I'm thrashing the temple where my family resides, but I just invented myself. That's all we're here to do, and the wisest we have known. No, we haven't got a clue. We haven't got a clue. No, we haven't got a clue. But here we are, and where are we? I said, here we are, and where are we? Well, I'm sure there is one thing I can find. Come and get away from my mind. I'll find something so divine. I'll surely be enlightened. One thing that is true, that the greed like to change my point of view, but I'm so frightened. Well, I like to get up with the sun to pray, but I wait so late in the day, and by then I'll just start running away. And again I let the light elude me. Again I let the light elude me. Again I let the light elude me. Again I get the light elude me. Further you go, more that you see might get you closer to who you think you're supposed to be. But wherever you go, I can guarantee your eyes will be watching some tiny little screen. They could be reading the Bible from a digital book, but we can never get back what the television took, or what the television took, or what the television took, yeah, what the television took. And here we are, and where are we? Well, here we are, and where are we? Oh, I'm sure there is one thing I can find. Help me get away from my mind. I found something so divine, I will surely be enlightened. One thing that is true, that the great heads can break through. I like to change my point of view, but I'm so frightened. I know there is a one thing you can do for someone other than you. I know your shadow's hard to break through, but still it's possible. One thing you can find that does more than occupy all your time. Try to see the divine as something possible, 'cause it's something possible. It's something possible. It's something possible. Something possible. But still I let the light elude me. Still I let the light elude me. Still I let the light elude me. Well, still I let the light elude me.
Oh my! Oh my! Bocephus King again, ladies and gentlemen. Bocephus, come to the couch now. I need to know more about you.
That was awesome.
Outstanding, buddy. Outstanding, outstanding. I'm all wired in. I don't want to make a mess. Awesome.
That was really cool.
For those that aren't familiar with you, you're a Tawasin guy.
Yeah, I grew up in Tawasin, Point Roberts.
But do you travel the world now? Do you not? Yeah. Give me
Worldish.
Worldish. Well, listen. I want to show something because I want to get to this right away.
It's the Italians that are in love with you right now, are they not? Was that the song that was? That was the song though that you translated.
No,
was
actually
it?
I didn't. I just changed my mind at the last minute.
Okay.
I saw Jodie talking.
She inspired something new.
I'll do that song later on. But I've been doing translations in Italy, yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, apparently this. Okay, hold on a sec. I got a little bit of a problem with Bocephus's mic, but no problem. It'll be my pleasure to hang with you right here.
Shane likes to get close on the couch.
There we go. No problem. So Bocephus, can we run the tape of
Dimi, as they say in
Bocephus
Italy.
on Italian TV, the Italian version of THC?
Okay. Actually, there's no Italian version of THC because it's very illegal there.
Okay, so we're looking at this right here, Bocephus. So there you go.
I'm happy
That's
to be
me.
with
That's
you.
the Italian me on the end of the black shirt.
That's me.
I'm wearing the same shirt.
Are you? Because that's the Italian.
In my red shirt.
Are you? You are wearing the same shirt. This is what you wear.
I only have one
Well, you're
shirt.
like Springsteen. You wear the same outfit when you go on.
What do you expect from this big...
Let me ask you, like, it is music. So, in Italy, what is it about your music that the folks go, oh, Bocephus King, I'm going to see that guy right now. Scoozy, I've got to go see Bocephus King.
Well, I guess the coy answer would be Italians are famous for their taste.
Right, sure. That's the best answer.
We have some Italians in the crowd, obviously.
The second record I made was popular in Italy. It was popular around there, and I just had remained with friends there, and so I've been able to keep this bridge and keep going over to Italy and playing over there, and I love Italy a lot.
It's a nice
beautiful
place.
But did you find it not strange, but were you surprised that like they go, oh, they've really received my album, my record well here for whatever reason? You don't try to look into it that much.
I'm not trying to think of it too much. I'm happy that exists because I go there like 2 or 3 times a year. But I like it a lot. It's a very esoteric place. It's got a lot of esoteric history. There's a lot of ley lines. It's a mysterious, strange place. But I don't think about it too much. But I do like it a lot.
It's not bad to go drink some wine, eat some cheese, some pizza, pasta.
Yeah, it's all pretty fun. But yeah, but cannabis is super illegal over there. Now they have medical marijuana, actually.
So, as someone in the music industry, was cannabis part of your earlier days? Maybe now too.
Cannabis, I grew up in British Columbia, so I smoked cannabis since I was a teenager. But I actually ended up doing a lot of harder drugs, and then got hooked on the harder drugs. And without marijuana, I would never have gotten off of them because I could not get my mind. Oh, it's true. I couldn't get over this hump, this kind of, you just get stuck, and it's like you need this stuff. So I'd gone on to methadone, and I started eating, making my own like oil with coconut oil, and just eating spoonfuls of it. And eventually, I kid you not, after I tried all sorts of things, I just at some point remembered if I wanted, I could just stop. From eating this, it just occurred to me, like whatever you want to call it, a shamanistic vision or something. I remembered if I could do this, and from that point, the fight to get over doing it, the mental chain that you have was released, and then I had normal detox, that I'd gone through before. I'd never gotten to that stage before because I couldn't handle getting to that stage. And so just at some point, I just had upped this amount that I was eating, and it was just like, it just kicked in. It was like I had a deep memory that if I chose to, I could just stop. And at some point, it just switched. My brain switched.
An epiphany. It was like, I don't need this.
But I'd used it before, and I'd used it like that. But since that point, then I used it I'd go to the sauna and eat it and meditate or whatever. And I detoxed incredibly quickly with that method.
See, people always talk, in the early days, misinformed about being a gateway drug. And now you're here talking, especially with the opioid crisis. It's more if it's an exit drug.
For you, yeah.
Actually, the worst drugs I ever did were all prescribed to me from a doctor. Amitriptyline was the worst drug I ever did. I was wandering around hallways. That was something a doctor prescribed to me for sleep. I was a teenager. They gave me OxyContin, and I loved that stuff because it blocks your third eye. You don't have any compassion or sympathy for people.
You're so walking zombie.
If you're empathetic, you get a break from people.
Right.
But I don't think that's a good thing. But if you're a super empathic person, it seems like a holiday. But I mean, that was something I could get from prescription. That's way worse for you, I think. Absolutely.
Let's talk music for a second.
Okay.
I hear people trying to describe maybe what kind of music, what type of music. I would say that you're just a storyteller. Would that be safe or not? Not even
more
that?
or less. I like rhythms, and I like playing with people from around the world. I was really lucky that this has ever happened to me, and I have a lot of freedom in my life because of it, and I get to travel around because of it. So it's a blessing. And so I just like to keep myself interested. I do play with different people from around the world. Anything I'm sort of interested in, I just seek that out, and I like that a lot because I like community. Music is a lot of community. It's like food or something. People like to gather around it, so it's like having a role in your community. I like being that person a lot.
Oh,
Thank you.
Where
can we
so
see
much
you?
for being.
We're going to get you to play again before we're out tonight. But if Do you have any gigs coming up?
The next thing I'm doing around here.
I just like saying gig, by the way.
Gig is I'm playing at the Genesis Theater in Ladner with these this Rio Samaya is this beautiful, these friends of mine, they really are community people, and that's going to be December 15th, but until then, I'm just finishing a record that I did in Italy and making another record here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to see
pleasure.
another song from you in just a short minute here. Next, we are joined by Terry Roycroft. I keep messing that one up. From MCRCI. Welcome, Terry. We're really excited to have you.
Great to be here.
To start it off, for the people who are watching who don't know what MCRCI stands for and what exactly it is, can you please inform us?
Sure. It's the Medicinal Cannabis Resource Centre. And we started back in 2007 originally. And funny enough, Jodie earlier was mentioning Michelle Rainey, and she was one of our original partners that we originally started with way back then, and even before we opened up one of our clinics, she had actually passed away, so it was really unfortunate that she hasn't been around, because this is one of the things that she had really pushed, and that's where the medicinal part of MCRCI came from, was actually that.
We called you one-stop shopping earlier, but not in the sense of shopping, but in the sense of if I'm someone that wants to, I'm the layman out there, I've heard about it, I've read about marijuana, I'm not sure, I'm tired of taking the stuff that my doctors prescribe me, or whatever the reason, I've got chronic pain, but I've never been down this road to get medical marijuana. Would you be the place I go in the sense of I'm going to get all the information I need, start from point A and end up at point B and be done?
Yes, basically we are.
So you are one-stop shopping, okay, so that fits.
The only thing that we wouldn't do is we wouldn't be supplying you the medicine out of our clinics. We would be directing you to one of the licensed producers or something. Other than that, though, all the lead up to be able to accomplish that, we do and we take care of.
Can you explain the process of it?
Yeah, so basically, this is the ACMPR. There's been several other versions of this starting in about 2000. So this one has come back in with the ability for people to actually get their grow licenses as well. So what's changed from the previous
personal growth license,
personal
right?
growth
right,
licenses,
okay.
yes. So it's changed from the previous version of this when they took that away, is now doctors now have to work within those confines. And a lot of the doctors in the earlier days were afraid of that in the first version, so this is why they didn't participate. The second version, they didn't have to worry about that. More and more doctors came on board and started to understand about cannabis. And now when the version came back, we're still seeing doctors being much more comfortable, so that allows us to do that. So what would happen is if you want to or you felt that cannabis would be useful for one of the ailments you had, and you didn't want to see your doctor, you were tired of pharmaceuticals, and you wanted to try cannabis, you would come to us.
And so if I'm coming into you and I'm going, okay, I've got whatever the situation is, what is the process? Am I seeing do you have doctors? Am I seeing a doctor there? Am I seeing, how does it?
The way it works is it's basically a clinic. It's a doctor's clinic, but we specialize in the treatment of cannabis. So what happens with us is we're a secondary care provider, meaning that you would come to us with a pre-diagnosed symptom that your doctor either isn't familiar with cannabis or isn't willing to support you and could refer them to us, or you could come to us directly. We would then do an intake with you just to find out if that is valid, and virtually, anything people come to us with, where cannabis will work to support. So that's really not much of an issue.
Right.
So we come to you, go through a process, then there'll be an intake. The girls will get information, create a file for you with the physician, and then we'll book an appointment with you. You'll have a time with the doctor, depending upon the severity of your issues, whether or not you're familiar with cannabis. It can be 10 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on what happens. After that, you would then go see one of our aftercare specialists, who would then take the information the doctor's putting in that file, direct you and register you with a licensed producer who is legally allowed to sell cannabis in Canada. There's about 40 of them now. I think about 30 of them now can actually sell. So there's quite a wide variety of products available, different programs, support systems for people that are in low income, veterans, things like that. And each licensed producer has kind of a different version. Some are organic, some grow in greenhouses. So whatever the needs are for you, we will direct you to the proper LP, register you, and then at that point you can order via mail order. People can send, then they will mail you your prescription, because when you leave us, you've got your prescription, you're registered, and you're educated at that point. So now you're in shape to be able to try your first time if you've never done it before.
I'm imagining that there was a time probably 5 years ago that I don't know, you had a dozen people coming in your place. In a month, I imagine now you have a dozen a day, if not more.
Yes, there's far more. I think we're talking about 14,000 people per month signing up for the federal program. So when we started, there were
again, live audience today. People are very 14,000, and it's only there we got the shot of the live audience you see today.
So it's dramatically increasing because more and more people are becoming aware. It's become mainstream, and more physicians, most importantly, are willing to support it. So we're not out there alone any longer. There's probably 100 clinics like ours in Canada.
Right. I'm wondering how many people now come to you as opposed to before that said, "Look, my doctor wants nothing to do with it, but I'd like to try this," and that's your person, as opposed to now going, "Hey, my doctor's already kind of written me a prescription, but I'm not quite sure. He wasn't well informed enough about the differences, about the specifics, and I'm coming to you for that."
And we have people coming to us for that.
Yeah, I would think, right?
Yeah, and I have a question too. So you're taking people, just to clarify for the audience, you are taking people off of pharmaceuticals who have serious medical issues, and you are now bringing them, and you're providing them a treatment program.
Well, yes, we have many people that have been oxycodone, that are on narcotics, that want to get off that. And the interesting thing about cannabis is that when you start them on a program, basically your CB1 and CB2 receptors work in conjunction with your opioid receptors, and they make them more effective. So immediately we can cut a person's dose in half once you start them on a cannabis program. And from there, we increase the cannabis and wean them off, and we've had many success stories of people being able to handle the chronic pain, the depression, and everything else that goes along with narcotic use and addiction to be able to get them off that. So we're not specifically a treatment program, but we have many other groups.
That's almost like a byproduct.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not saying, here, if you're addicted, we're not an addiction center.
No.
But it's a byproduct of by going, hey, if you want to try something else as opposed to that, this could change the equation completely.
Right, and we have the groups that deal with those people, sending and referring people to us for that support, because it's well known. There's been a study that was done by Tilray just recently, and there's many things out there that point to the effect that cannabis can help get people off and help with this opiate addiction. So from that matter, more and more of the organizations are being open to it, and we're being contacted by more of them saying, can you help, or are you available, and what's the story with the legal, scenario here?
Besides the opioids, what are some of the main medical conditions that people are coming to you and are actually noticing huge changes? Because I know, you guys work with cancer patients, and I know that is a huge majority of us have watched people go through that, and to see somebody, through a different light, trying something different. Can you kind of talk about that a bit?
Well, what happens is chronic pain is traditionally where we have our biggest area, and chronic pain can be with a lot of things. That could be from byproducts of cancer, accidents, all kinds of things. So that's one of the primary. Second is sleep problems, and that is, again, a byproduct of having chronic pain, not be able to get proper sleep, and then stress and anxiety are the third and fourth kind of underneath that, and again, all byproducts of those combination of symptoms, creating all those symptoms as they flow down. So, cannabis obviously can work in all those areas. We do see people for cancer. It's not the largest area, but when people need support and actually direction to Rick Simpson oil or Phoenix Tears, things that are available through dispensaries that are not available through licensed producers, we try to connect them with appropriate sources, can assist them with that. There are certain protocols that we'll go through to get the proper dosages for them and assist them in that way.
You guys seem like an information center to some degree, right? Like a
Cannabis Resource Centre.
Right, like there's something you need to know. No, regardless, different aspects of it, whether it's the prescription part, whether it's the difference of the strains, depending on what your question is, you don't have to be someone who's there from start to finish. You could be coming going, as I said, you already got my prescription, but I need some help. I don't know what to take.
Yeah, so we're there for any parts of those portions throughout that process of helping them. If they don't know, we can educate. If they do know, we can take them to the next step and get them licensed if they need direction. So anyone can come to us from any piece of that, or if they need from start to finish and they're naive and have never tried cannabis before, or they're elderly or things like that, which we see a lot of elderly people now getting involved in cannabis because of their long-term use of anti-inflammatories or painkillers, we're starting to see breakdowns in their stomach and liver problems and things like
right,
that.
And they've been sold a bill of goods their entire lives,
Exactly.
believing that
Here,
if they,
take these,
if
take
they
this,
went,
and
well,
look
no,
at
but
it.
if I'm sure they're afraid, you know, if I smoke that marijuana or I took that marijuana,
yeah.
next thing I know, I'm using a needle, right? Like because they've been sold that
or I'm
story
going to
forever.
not be able to do anything. I'm going to turn into a
right.
Well, typically it's the child that is at the senior center or at the hospital saying, "Listen, we see you have these problems, Mom, Dad. Why don't you try this?"
Yeah.
And so people have brought in some cookies, and it's been gone around, and everyone's feeling good about it. And so now the staff are starting to be accepting of that. And we've talked to a number of senior centers and different groups that want to start, you know, supplying cannabis to their patients, but they need to know, can it be legal? If it is, what are the dosages and things like that? And that's what we can come in and help educate and create some policies for organizations like that.
So the opposite of seniors is children.
Right.
And you guys are also, are you the only company right now that's working with children in Canada?
Well, there's very, very few doctors that will. Some doctors will, but we're probably one of the only companies specifically geared there, other than an independent doctor that may be working within that realm. But we do have a doctor, our medical director, who's very well known throughout the country for his expertise and knowledge in cannabis, and he will see children. Obviously, it's a different scenario. Yeah. We can license them because what we want to do is we want to license the parents to be legally allowed to possess it so that they can give it to their children without worrying about having legal repercussions. So there's a process for that, whereby usually this is when most things have been tried. And we have them come to us. They've talked to their pediatrician who is on board. Our physician will talk to them, they'll have a conversation, they will refer them to us because many things don't work and they really want to try this. They've either tried it illegally, seen it working, and then want to be legal so that they don't get themselves in trouble, have their children taken away or any of these things. And so we can help with that. And there's many documentaries out there talking about and showing children being really affected in a major positive way immediately when they start using cannabis. Sanjay Gupta from CNN, who's got the series Weeds.
Oh, he
Weeds
changed
1.
his whole tune.
You know,
he became one of those guys that said, no, it's a gateway drug, to, you know what, we should be prescribing this, it should be decriminalized. Again, it's all about education.
So, and that's for the children, especially low CBD products, and this is what we're seeing now, CBD products with no THC coming out. The licensed producers are producing low THC, high CBD products and oils, so that, you know, again, the children that go through the right process, that have all the authorizations by their parents and their other pediatricians, can now get access to that without breaking the law. I was in Australia last year, and we were talking about cannabis with children, and it was very taboo subject there. None of the physicians would talk about it in front of anyone else. They would only talk to me privately after I did the talk, and there'd been several doctors that had been put in jail with the parent for giving a child Rick Simpson oil, and it worked, and all three of them went to jail, and they took her off the CBD oil, and she started to deteriorate. So this was why it was at such a high point of topic when I was down there. So, you know, we see it all around the world that it's working. Luckily here, we've got the ability to make it legal, and in certain places down in the States, people will move from all over the States to places like Colorado just to be able to get access to the oil so they're not breaking the law and you know, to save their children.
Yeah, well, we had Haley Rose. She was here just a few weeks ago, sitting in that chair talking about her survival story, pretty much. So, so we have some audience questions again. We can send over there.
So I was just wondering, what would be the benefit of purchasing from a licensed producer rather than, you know, just going to a dispensary and being licensed?
Right. Well, that's a good question because there's so many dispensaries around these days and popping up. Well, one of the advantages would be that your medicine is tax deductible right off the top. So now, if you're using large amounts of medicine, you can actually write that off. So that is because you're licensed with a licensed producer, and they will be giving you the authorization to be able to do that. Secondary, there's very, very strict standards around the medical marijuana producers, whereby they have to meet much criteria for mold, mildew, all that sort of thing. So it's very strictly controlled. Now with dispensaries, many of them take all those precautions as well. They have microscopes and things like that, but other ones may not. And if you're someone looking for medicine and your system is compromised, you want to make sure that there's no other kind of toxins or pollutants in it. So for medical patients, it is important to make sure that that's the case. But for recreational patients, it may not, or users, it may not be that important that, you know, for something like that.
Run out one more, Terry?
We have another question, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to start, is talking about dispensaries and their role here. Hi, Terry. My name's Mason. Nice to see you. I work for one of the dispensaries, and of course, this year has been amazing for us as far as the energy and focus on what we're doing. And you're working directly with LPs, but I really want to know, what do you think the role of the dispensary is in all this, and the importance? You mentioned Phoenix tiers. You can't get that through other, government-run programs. So, we're taking a risk. The client and a patient has to take a risk. What role do you think dispensaries will play next year? And do you think the ones that are currently operating deserve some level of amnesty for taking this step and bravely helping people?
Are you talking medical dispensaries or just any dispensary?
Well, dispensary, it doesn't matter if it's medical or personal. It's the same thing, really, if you think about it. Stress relief is...
No, I agree that it's always medicinal, but legally there's a difference.
Well, that's wrong too. That's a divide and conquer strategy, isn't it? They're trying to separate recreational from medicinal. I don't think there should be a distinction. It should be personal use. That's what we really feel.
No, I hear what you're saying. It is, but it isn't that way. It should be that way.
Definitely.
But,
So
but
I'm
it's
asking,
not right.
Should we be given the chance to continue next year, even though we're not part of these big LPs? Should we be given that amnesty, at least one chance, because we are testing our product? Because I don't think any of the dispensaries have any major legal action against them for health violations on behalf of clients. Most people are thankful they don't have to wait in a parking lot. So what do you think for next year?
Well, I don't just work with licensed producers. I work with dispensaries for exactly the reason you brought up. There's many products out there that are not available by the licensed producers. So as a resource center ourselves, we don't just limit ourselves to that. Yes, we're medical. We help people in that way. But what we do is we also will direct them with appropriate dispensaries that have tested medicine that we know that is clean, or the people who have produced it. Those sort of things, we will assist them, especially for cancer patients. People like that can't get the product from the licensed producers, and I totally agree with you. There is a place for dispensaries. Now, what's going to be happening here as we move along, the amnesty that you're talking about, well, one point to look at that is, well, you've been breaking the law for whatever reasons, so why should you be rewarded for that?
So are you, Terry. By directing people to dispensaries, you're breaking the law as well.
Well, exactly. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is that is part of the attitude when we're talking about allowing dispensaries to move ahead. What I believe is going to happen is there's going to be a operation. There's going to be a standard operating procedures. BC's putting it in place. Ontario's putting it in place. Right or wrong, each province is going to be putting that in place. Now, if you're a dispensary and you want to continue, the problem you're going to have is where you're getting your product from. Now, if you want to be a legal dispensary and be in line with all the regulations, it's going to come down that you're going to be getting your product from these licensed producers, because the current model right now, albeit it's working and it's supplying all the product out there, it is basically illegal. The program was never designed for people to grow for themselves in mass and have major overages and use that to supply outside sources. So I believe the law is going to try and use that as their enforcement method. If you're a dispensary and you want to work within the confines that are there, like everyone else is doing, you'll have the opportunity to do that. Now, you've got a great advantage as a dispensary in this industry, because you've got patient flow, you've got product knowledge, and you've got locations. And if they're going to put a program in for dispensaries, they're going to be using the same criteria that you're probably in already, meaning distance from schools and and liquor stores, things like that. So you're in a great position to actually be legal and go down that road. But the problem you're going to run into is that the supply chain, which is currently coming from the medical marijuana market, is probably going to be interrupted. And if you want to be legit, you're going to have to probably buy your strains from the licensed producers, who, by the way, are interested still at this point in making those connections, because they understand they're going to need storefront distribution as well. So I think there's an opportunity for everybody to work together as we move forward.
Terry, thanks so much. Great question, man. Thank you. Terry, thank you so much for coming in, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right. Terry Roycroft, of course, President, Medicinal Cannabis Resource Centre. Before we get to a little more Bocephus King coming up on the show next week,
we have John Conroy, and he is a lawyer. He is coming in. He kind of is on the side that marijuana should not be classified as an illegal drug, but instead as a healthcare product. So he's going to have a lot to say about that.
Also from U of T, Steve Laviolette coming in. He's a professor in the Department of Autonomy and Cell Biology, Psychiatry. He studies the effects of marijuana on the brain. He'll join us from Toronto via Skype. But for now, one more time.
Bocephus King!
I just want to tell you, this is my good friend Tim on the flute here. Tim Quinlan. We've been friends for over 30 years. And this is a reggae song because this is a THC show. Do 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 do. I rise up this morning, I look right beside me. There you are, you're still sleeping. Maybe you're dreaming. You look like an angel. Well, you make me happy. You make me sing. Me love you every day, 'cause you stand by me. Me love you every day, 'cause you're in my life. I do 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 do. If I was a captain, I'd give you my boat. If I was a prince, I would make you my princess. But I am only me. You are my love, the only one I need to sing to you. Me love you every day, 'cause you stand by me. Me love you every day, 'cause you're in my life. I do 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 do. Me love you every day, 'cause you stand by me. You stand by me. You stand by me. You stand by me. you.